Now, for all three of you who are with us in the studios in Lagos, the question to ask would be that, for example, what Mr. Kemene just pointed out, the ANEC management has said that, look, the facilities that are used for polling don't belong to them. Most of them are hired, and therefore investing in the various things that various groups need and so on is a more long-term project. But in the short term, because of the needs of each individual group, the question of ramps, bigger polling booth spaces, and so on, and because we are talking of 2 days away, Mr. Bashir has talked about the lack of sensitization of Braille papers. What challenges are you having as of today for this election on Saturday?
Well, the challenges we are looking at also will still be in the case of accessibility, inclusiveness. But what I really think INEC should put in place right now is those reports which have been submitted to them. Those reports should be put into use. They had issues of actually identifying those polling units which these materials will be sent to. For example, in Surulere, which we have over 571 polling units, it's in Surulere local government, we had a situation where we have 17 blind people who actually need Braille materials to actually cast their vote. So this was a major challenge. But I discussed with the disability desk officer, and the disability desk officer said that there's going to be a situation room where actually contacts will be given to these polling officers. And if they need these materials, if it will be possible for them to ship these materials to the various polling units. That is why I'm saying I'm looking onto INEC to actually put these things which they have promised persons with
Have they, or they have promised, but you don't?
Yeah, they have promised. We are hoping they put it in.
You haven't seen them yet. Mr. Bashir, yes.
Yeah, if I may comment, I think the problem INEC has to start with the registration form. Because we've argued over the years that in the registration form should capture disability. Once you capture the disability type and the disability of the person, you'll be able to know the number of persons with disabilities at any particular polling center. But if you don't, then you'll go around dilly-dallying. And that's a great error. And one other thing I really want to point out is we are missing out on particular disabilities. Persons with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities seem to have been completely ignored in this process. In fact, the Nigerian Constitution is so silent on persons with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities as if they don't even exist in the country.
Maybe you need to, break that down a little, because most people who are probably listening to you don't know what that means.
But I think before that, there's somebody you want to add to the...
Okay, yes, indeed. From our Abuja studios, we're being joined now by Pt.2, the Vice President of Project Young Business and Professional Women. Thank you very much for joining us at this point in time. We'll come to you about where women feature in all this. We're not saying that women are vulnerable groups, although they were mentioned when we talked about participation. Yes. But Mr. Bashir, who are these people you're saying have been completely left out?
Persons with intellectual disabilities, those that you think that people tend to call mad or whatever. These people have a right to vote, just like any other person. It seems like our Constitution doesn't seem to think about them, and so we have to take them seriously into consideration. They have schools, they attend schools. Some of them pass out with very good grades. And so, ignoring that particular group is a disservice to, humanity, I believe.
Okay, we'll come back to that in just a moment. But let me go to Abuja. Let's go to Abuja and talk to Ukot Umezine. Now, again, women are particularly vulnerable here because more often than not, there are many women who have to go to the polling booth with their kids, especially those who are nursing mothers and those who are heavily pregnant. And that's why I understand the electoral guidelines talks about visibly pregnant, that if you are visibly pregnant, then you are treated as a vulnerable group. To ask you the question, do you think that women's participation has been made much easier by some of the guidelines that have been introduced since 1999?
Yes, so I believe so. Women's participation.
Please go on, we're listening.
Okay, so women's participation, yes, definitely has been taken into consideration a lot in the guidelines, and we commend INEC for that. However, as with anything, we would like that more consideration is given to women in such guidelines in the future to ensure that the participation is increased across different issues that
Can you highlight some of those issues?
Yes, very important. Yes. Say again.
Please highlight some of those issues.
Okay, so for women, going to poll on Saturdays, I mean, if you think even as far as saying, okay, can we provide services where women who have maybe young children who have to go to those centers with them, what happens? How convenient is it to go stand in the sun and, you know, wait all day to make that happen with maybe toddlers? Some other women, we're talking about people with disabilities, you know, how do you ensure that women with disabilities are also accounted for? I think even beyond the guidelines, also ensuring that women have a better chance even in running for office and being able to really make a difference in the area of taking up offices. That access has to be broadened for women in the political process.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the report for Partners West Africa, and they were trying to look at the number of women participating, even if you look at the National Assembly elections, for instance, and talking about the fact that there's a difference between participating, just being seen in terms of visibility, and actually being on the ballot where you can be voted for. How do you think we can change this narrative, or let me say women can change this narrative of just being given appointments, that's political appointments, rather than actually being on the ballot and voted for?
Yes, so I've been in groups where these have been discussed, and I mean, I've heard things that probably I shouldn't say on air that go on in some of these parties where women come forward to indicate interest in running for office. So for women to, I mean, for me, I think we just have to grow organically through the process. Women need to see it as something that they need to be involved in, and to galvanize their efforts. So if we have more women coming together to, you know, maybe promote one woman, or more women even participating in the political parties and, you know, making sure their voice is heard, taking up positions, so that where decisions are made, where, you know, this person should go forward, there are enough women on such panels or such boards or such groups to speak up for women. So we need more women participating from, you know, the grassroots right up to the national level in parties, and making sure that their voices are heard. Because sometimes what you find is it's, you know, just one woman, or, you know, just trying to make a path for herself. So women need to see that they have a place at the table, and they need to come to the table and make their voices heard.
You know that they have a place at the, you know, they have a place at the table debate is another issue entirely, because you hear people say, take your place, nobody's going to invite you to the table. But being as we're looking at Saturday, and looking at the number of women that are running, let's say for the National Assembly elections as well, are you impressed with the number, even though you've said, yes, we need more participation, but what do you think about the people on offer? Do we know who our female candidates for the elections are?
Yes, so definitely this year we've had a lot of awareness going across different demographics, the, you know, women, youth. More people are aware and want to participate, which is a good thing. But definitely those numbers need to keep going up, you know. My hope is that Nigerians will not go back to sleep and wait till the next elections, that in the next 4 years, these discourse that we're having in different groups will continue, and that we will keep the momentum going, because that's the only way that we can secure our democracy. If we live every day, engaging the systems for democracy. For example, so someone gets into office and is your senator, is your House of Rep member. Do you have his number? Do you know how to reach him? These are things we need to push for, so that it's not another 4 years or 3 years of sleeping and then 1 year to the time we're waking up. If we keep having those conversations in women groups, in every group, we will see increased numbers of participation across the board. Because even right now, there's another group that people are saying are not participating enough, which are the elites, people who just say, oh, please, I can't stress myself, I'm okay, I'll just stay at home. All of these groups need to get more involved. If we don't do something about our country, then nothing will happen.
Now, Mr. Andronicus of the Red Cross Society, now, one would assume that the role of your society would be to synthesize the views of all these various vulnerable groups and have some kind of generic action plan that covers their various needs, with a view to working with an organization such as INEC to provide for such facilities. Have you been doing this? And if so, what has been the experience?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Akeredolu. We have done that. We have submitted our contingency plan to INEC chairman, Professor Yakubu, and it's been acknowledged. But then, come to think of it, a number of these issues have not been captured in the electoral law itself. For instance, last year, Georgia, state of Georgia, just passed some of these issues in their electoral law. So if you want some Nigerian Red Cross to really be able to take to the forefront campaigning for these classes of honorable group, INEC in itself have to take it upon with the legislature putting all these aspects, clauses, into electoral law. Next week in Ukraine, Kiev, they will be discussing similar issues because they have found out that they have gotten a lot of vulnerable with the conflict situations in Ukraine. And these things, using Georgia experience, they want to also capture it in the electoral law. And Brooklyn institutions is promoting this. So the same thing goes for Nigeria. If you want really to really make it, then legislation have to be all civil society, Red Cross movement, International Committee of Red Cross, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, Nigerian Red Cross being operating national society in country, have to all come together to assist INEC to use other clients, other countries' best practices, so that all these aspects of IDPs, disabilities, and what have you have to be captured in our electoral law. Apart from that, we cannot do much because it's not justiciable. It cannot be enforced.
Okay, Mr. Andronicus, can I also ask you about another vulnerable group? And I'm talking about the core members. And that's because a number of parents, had asked what the medical arrangement for them is. One of them had talked about being stung by a scorpion. And even though the overlay, which is what they call it, the stay overnight, to early in the morning, is not very long, which is what we hear. It is an overnight stay. Do you think the medical facilities for Saturday are in place?
Yes, Nigerian Red Cross will be deploying over 10,000 volunteers and staff across 36 states, including Federal Capital Territory. And we have their team leaders trained a couple of weeks back, 1,872. We have trained team leaders, 72 team leaders per state, to oversee these humanitarian services nationwide. And we have our international partner with us, technically supporting us funding us also, like International Committee of Red Cross and International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies that have been helping us. You'll be seeing a number of our ambulances across board. So we are there for everybody, including those INEC officials that will be fatigued, those who will collapse on queue as a result of long queue. All these things have been taken in our scenario building, planning. And we have taken them, every vulnerable group, into consideration. And we have shared our contingency plan with INEC, as I've said. And as earlier on, as I've said, we'll be deploying across the board, So they are welcome.
Okay, Mr. Andronicus, we need to take another little break. And when we come back, we'll come back to our panel here in Lagos just to ask them a bit more about what the preparations for